gardeners, and welcome back to Desert Gardening News, a Star Nursery podcast, your resource for all things desert gardening. My name's Madalyn.
And I'm Joey Lynn.
And we're so excited to be talking to you guys today about gardens, vegetable and herb gardens specifically. To start, as an introduction, I am a student and I'm currently going for my certification as a Nevada nurseryman. And Joey Lynn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am Star Nursery's certified arborist. A lot of you guys might know me from Dr. Q's House Calls, which is a service that we go to your house for a little fee and just check your plants and your trees and shrubs and any kind of problem. We do diagnostics of insects, disease, nutrients. So that is my wonderful contribution to Star Nursery.
I've been with Star
been with Star Nursery for a long time and really enjoying being around our wonderful community, helping to educate, helping to enlighten, helping to build a passion for all things gardening here in the Desert Southwest.
There are a lot of passionate gardeners here, and we are here to invigorate it even more.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking about how you're going to get started with your garden. And since it's the new year, we thought we'd go over some different gardening statistics that we found very interesting and we wanted to share with you. So without further ado, let's get into it. So in 2023, we actually have some new research in regards to gardening statistics out. And there's a couple sources that have put out some information. So I'll just be going over some different information that I thought would be fun. So according to the 2021 State of the Industry Report, 55% of U.S. households have a garden. Now, if we think about that, over half.
That's amazing.
That is really amazing. And it's actually put us as a nation in the top 3 nations of gardeners. So we as a nation, we're up there for gardening. We do a lot.
That is fantastic. That's a lot higher than I would have expected.
It was a lot higher than I expected as well. I feel like for the most part, I, walk around my neighborhood or I'll see houses as I'm driving past and their landscapes are mainly rock, or maybe some metal plants, and I'm not really anticipating half of the nation to...
Well, that tells you what's going on in their backyard, maybe. I think that's a good point to point out, though. Here in Las Vegas, there's a lot of master planned communities, and we're so known for having bad soil, and we're so known for just everything's a struggle here because of our high temperatures. So that's good to know, though, that we are making a contribution to the world's gardening numbers.
And I hope that everyone is ready to get out into their yards, their backyards, or their community gardens and start gardening and benefiting our earth a little bit more this year. So in 2023 in the West, 23% of Americans garden. So that's a little different. So we're talking about half of the nation, a little more than half the nation have gardens. Mm-hmm. But then in the West specifically, where we're kind of located, only 23% of Americans are gardening.
Yeah. I think it's because people just are scared. They don't want to do all this work and not have a positive outcome.
It's intimidating, especially when you're nurturing a living thing. Yeah. Just a little organism right in front of you, and now, you watch it maybe slowly die for a little bit.
So let me ask,
it can be disheartening.
Gardening encompasses everything. We're not just talking about vegetable gardens or rose gardens. We're talking about the act of gardening, right?
So I'm not sure if the statistics had a differentiation between maybe indoor gardening, outdoor gardening. It just kind of said as a broad home gardening. So I would say that it would exclude like farms and agriculture and that kind of thing. Unless maybe they're like some private farms maybe would, I don't know if that'd be considered a home garden at that point though.
No, I don't think so. But I think that gardening would be all of it. So even if you're puttering around in the soil for bulbs just once a year, you're part of the gardening world. It's exciting.
And by age group, it's pretty interesting too. So I would say a lot of people think of gardening as maybe a hobby for maybe retired people that have a lot of time on their hands. It takes some time to nurture a garden. But surprisingly, there is a large group of millennials coming up in the ranks for this generation as gardeners. And I think that's really exciting. I think it maybe has to do with our recent pandemic, maybe having a lot of time on your hands, or maybe going remote in your job and having more time at home to spend in your gardens. But regardless,
that's exciting.
It's pretty exciting.
Yes.
It's exciting to have different age groups involved in our planet and involved in nurturing different species.
Yes. Doing active things to improve our quality of life. That's what we all want. We want to have an amazing quality of life. And gardening is something that you can do the work and see a response.
Almost immediate too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you guys have already seen that, at this point we're pushing into the spring, and maybe you've already germinated some seeds, or you're getting ready to do some transplants, and we'll get into that later. But it is very exciting because now is the season to reap what you sow.
There you go.
So gardeners by age group, actually, 11% are 18 to 29-year-olds, 21% are 30 to 49-year-olds, 29% are 50 to 64-year-olds, and the other 39%, which takes up a good portion of it, are predominantly 65 years and older or younger than 18. So they kind of just grouped both of them. So they didn't really quantify.
Well, it is the cycle of life. What the babies are learning, yes.
That is true.
Our older community, it is. It's probably a great reflection of how society works, and the learning process and the aging process, and it does not have to be technical. It can be as simple as a kindergartner learning how to sprout a seed that they, that came out of a fruit.
Timeless. Gardening is ageless, and it also is genderless because in terms of gender, 54% of gardeners are female, and the other, 46% is male. So it's
right down the middle.
Yeah, it's right down the middle, and anyone can garden.
Anyone can garden.
And you can really garden anywhere.
You really can. And we're going to teach you how to do it.
We're going to teach you right now how to do it. So some of the recent key findings from research studies done by UNC Health and Princeton University say that gardening fosters self-esteem and a sense of accomplishment. Gardening relieves stress, anxiety, and depression. Gardening increases the level of vitamin D, vital for the normal functioning of the immune system. And gardening also increases the level of serotonin, which is a brain chemical responsible for the feeling of happiness. So gardening has a lot of benefits.
Well, you sold me. All around better feeling, well-being. That's pretty exciting. Count me in. I'll take that medication.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Well, I am with Dr. Q's house calls, so I can prescribe it.
The doctor
is in. The doctor is in, and Dr. Q is prescribing you garden for your mental and physical well-being.
And it might be needed. We're coming we're basically in a new year still, and maybe
That's
we're
right.
still
We can
finding
make this
our bearings a little bit. And if you need something to occupy your mind and also increase your serotonin levels and relieve your stress, then gardening is a way to go. And the best states for gardening, according to Ruby Home, are in order: Alabama, Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia. And the list goes on, but it's interesting to see the wide array of geographic areas that they listed. I'm not sure how this list came about, but it's fun to see that, Arizona, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, those are all over.
Well, there's Alabama, Arizona, California, lots of sun.
That is true.
So maybe that vitamin D is what's making it so popular, because people are just all around feeling better. California on the list, though, with all of their traffic woes, it's probably why they probably want to just get home and garden.
That's true. They probably want to spend a little bit more time at home and less
time in traffic. Sorry, California.
Sorry, California.
So, speaking of Dr. Q's house calls, I did a house call for a 90-year-old woman the other day.
Wow.
And it's still a little chilly here. So we're still experiencing some lows with our temperature and some rain. And she was amazing at 90 years old.
Really?
She had a gardening question and she sat on the raised garden bed, which was just a few Windsor blocks high, maybe just a couple feet. And we sat there. And when she was working in the soil, Madalyn, she was one with the soil.
Really?
She brought me peace and calm and comfort as she was just sifting. And the reason that she had the house call was because there was an invasive weed that was taking over, because her soil was so rich, so amazing that a neighboring plant would rather grow in her garden than on its side of the wall, because the plants don't know any different. But Madalyn, I wish that you could have experienced her and seen her working. And she was just sitting over the planter, and she was just sifting with her hands. And at the beginning of the house call, she was really stressed out. And it's a lot to have somebody like me come in and try to diagnose something or tell you why something's happening. And the neighbor's root system was infuriating to her. But she was just calmly going through her garden, her hands, it was cool and moist, and it was just an amazing really experience. It was amazing, and it really does. I said, boy, you're really one with your soil. And she goes, oh yes, Joey, I'm in my soil all the time. I love my soil. And that's how she knew the root wasn't hers, though, because she knows what her roots look like, and it was not from her. That's right.
I have a trespasser. I need him gone. That's awesome. Well, if you're listening today, I hope she's doing good going into the springtime. I hope her garden's thriving.
Oh, well, I'll be emailing her later.
Okay,
yes,
good.
She does email at 90. No excuse for anybody out there. No, I'm just joking.
If 90-year-olds can use email, so can you.
That's right.
Well, in this part of the show, we like to ask our resident expert a couple questions about gardening and seeing what they know or what they don't know. But it really is no pressure. This is just a time for us all to learn something new and have fun.
I feel pressured.
There's no pressure.
Okay, go ahead.
There's no pressure. All right, so our first question is, how many million years ago did trees evolve?
Oh my goodness, there's no way I know this. I don't know this, and I'm a certified arborist. If this was on the certified arborist
It probably wasn't.
Certification, that might have been one of the ones I got wrong, but
No,
I don't know.
It probably wasn't, but from my sources, they said 450 million years ago. So trees have been around for a very long time, but there was also a long time that trees weren't around, and that the real big plant life was actually fungi.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So before trees, you had
single
fungi.
organisms.
Mm-hmm. And then trees came along and they dominated the earth. And now we are kind of
reverting back.
Yeah,
well,
we're kind of going through this process of a lot of trees are getting eliminated. And a lot of those natural forests have been already eliminated just due to, different deforestation kind of things.
Well, and also just the natural decline. Everything has a lifespan.
Right.
Did you know? I have something for you. Did you know that? And we'll have to do some research to get it exactly. But we have one of the oldest living trees here in the state of Nevada. And
Really?
It is over 2,000 years old.
Really?
And it's actually, there's a really, really scary story about it. Somebody had vandalized it.
Well, that's
and
what I've
so,
heard
yes.
a lot about these trees is now they're keeping these very old historic trees secret. Because I know of two. I know of one that I guess somebody who was under the influence of something actually set fire to one, and then that one was like a prehistoric tree or something that they had grown from a really old seed or something. And then the other one was a drunk driver in the middle of nowhere. The tree was so alone, and there was no trees near it.
Isolated.
And they're so isolated, and somehow a drunk driver ran into it. And how?
Well,
how?
You know that you drive where you're looking. So it was probably caught him off guard. He thought he was probably seeing, was it a Joshua tree like in episode 1?
I don't know.
He thought that.
I don't know if it was a Joshua tree. I forget which type. But yeah, and so now these scientists are keeping a lot of the locations of these trees secrets that nothing
People
else
can't be
happens
trusted.
to them.
People can't be trusted. But the thing about the trees is that we're in a wonderful point in our knowledge about our environment and our urban tree canopy. That's what we call it. It's called an urban forest. And how do we maintain our urban forest? How do we maintain our canopy when we're having drought regulations, or we're in a drought situation and we're mandated to change our watering habits? This is on the forefront of everybody's mind on how are we going to maintain our tree canopy, because it matters now. And so there's so many people. The United States Department of Forestry is extremely involved in all of this. And the most interesting thing is that it used to be the Forestry Department did a lot of fire prevention. Right. And that was how this desert Southwest would lose its canopy, was the cycle of fires that would burn through. But when the trees that are native in the desert Southwest, did you know that they actually get invigorated by that burning process?
Oh, interesting.
That is in their DNA, that they come back. So what we're having a problem with is all of the implants, all of the imported trees. They can't. So we got to get back to a place where we are planting natives.
Right.
Now, whether that's a DNA native or it is a adaptive native, there are two different types. So that should be our goal. Get those tree canopies up, get it in a tree form that is conducive to your environment, and let's promote longevity with these trees.
Yeah, because they've been around for a while, but, we want to make sure that they stick around a long while more.
Mm-hmm.
So our next question on our quiz show portion of the show. In the 1600s, what flower became so popular in Holland that it was worth more than gold and caused the crash of the Dutch economy?
Well,
you probably know this.
Yeah, it would be the tulip.
Yeah.
But I don't want to sound like there might be some people that didn't know that, but you said Holland.
I know,
and
it's kind of a dead giveaway.
Tulip, this is an amazing...
It's crazy.
Yeah.
In the 1600s, the craze was effectively called Tulip Mania. And now that same term is used to refer to any large economic bubble when asset prices deviate from intrinsic value. So obviously a tulip, you wouldn't think would be worth more than gold.
Wow.
But for a period of time it was, and it caused an entire economy to crash. And it was really interesting because I did visit the Netherlands in 2022, and I did go to the Tulip Museum to go check that out, and it was really wild. Just they have a whole video about it that I'm sure you can find on their website. And I took away some trinkets, and they sell bulbs there, like bulbs of all different varieties. It's really amazing if you're ever
It's
in
beautiful.
the Netherlands.
It's really neat.
It's a cool place to check out.
I'm so glad you got to see
it
in
was
person.
Really fun. I got a little tote bag for myself. But yeah,
I think I might even have a little bracelet from there from
maybe
you.
I gave you a little gift.
You did, and I love it.
But yeah, so tulips, crazy thing about a flower, and I think that it's an iconic flower just for the reason that it affected so many millions of lives just existing.
Absolutely. Wow.
All right, and number 3, peaches, pears, apricots, strawberries, and apples are all part of what family?
Peaches, pears, apricots,
strawberries, and apples.
The rose family.
The Rosaceae? Is that how you say the family botanical? Rosaceae, or is it Rosaceae?
Rosacea.
Oh, I was way off.
Rosaceae.
I can't say it.
Rosaceae. There you go. Rosaceae.
Yeah, I can't say it. So sorry.
Well,
guys.
Latin botanical names are really, really difficult. That is a little bit of my weakness. That is the botanical names, because it's another language. It's Latin. So, but it is important to know. We should know these things, and we should start referring to them like that, because common name, rose, but that's for, that's for very, very technical, and we'll get there.
Technical.
We'll learn all together how to do all that.
But within this family, there are roses, as you might suspect, and there's also a lot of flowering trees and fruit trees that fall within this family that I personally didn't know about before doing this. But yeah, and there's like over like 3,000 species within this family.
And
it's crazy.
Do you know why it's important to know what family that a plant is?
Tell me, Joey Lynn.
It's because, let's say, roses are susceptible to like powdery mildew.
Right.
Okay, so if you know the family of the plant and you have a chronic condition, then something like a powdery mildew, for every kind of plant is a type of powdery mildew.
That's right, yeah.
So if you know the base of your plant, then you actually can better prevent or inoculate or annihilate a disease in your plant by knowing. So it is important because some plants don't respond to a certain fungus fungicide at a certain time of year, and so you have to know those things. And did you also know that the flowering plum is in that family as well as a rose? And that's that purple. People call it a purple leaf plum, or they'll say, I have a cherry blossom in my yard. And technically here in the desert Southwest, that's the flowering plum. And yes,
you
they
have
do.
One of those.
Yes, I have a very beautiful
love the
one.
fruits off of
And
that
I'll
tree.
tell you something, they are a struggling plant here. They get sunburn really, really badly at a young, early age. And then they spend their whole life kind of struggling because of inadequate irrigation. And then they get the borers, the beetles that get in there and they bore around and they girdle the plants. And so they do have a very treacherous life here. They should be planted in a protected area. They should not be out in the full sun. They should be planted where there's morning sun and they're protected from the afternoon sun. And plant placement and sun exposure is a really, really important part of gardening. And you should always know what's best for the plant, not just necessarily what spot you have in your yard where you want to fill it.
That's great information, especially if you're looking to invest in one of these beautiful trees.
And it can be done. A lot of associations and communities are no longer recommending them, but we still have free choice. We still get to make these choices for ourselves. And yes, I have a beautiful one that I try to protect because I want to have it for a really long time.
And our last question for today.
Okay.
You used to be a baker, correct?
Yes.
Yes. You used to bake cakes. So
How did you know this?
Oh my goodness. It's as if I know you so well. So you might know this, you might not know this, but what plant does vanilla come from?
Oh, vanilla. Well, it's a bean, right? It's a bean. So
I don't know. What do you know?
I would say it's a vanilla bean, a plant. I mean, is there a vanilla plant?
Okay, I'm not going to lie. I don't know if that is a thing, a vanilla plant. From my research, I have found out that vanilla actually comes from orchid.
Ooh, well, really? Gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's even more amazing that the orchid family is actually the largest flowering plant family on Earth, with about 30,000 species. It's also one of the oldest plant families, developing about 84 million years ago. And that's pretty insane to think about. You know, if trees only came around 450 million years ago, and then orchids came about around about 84 million years ago.
Wow.
In the sense of it being the oldest plant family, one of the oldest plant families, is pretty crazy. And here in Nevada, where our headquarters are located, we have actually 14 species of orchid that are native here to our state. And for reference, Hawaii only has 3.
Those numbers are that is shocking. Those
Isn't
are
that
all
crazy?
new numbers to learn, all new information to learn.
Well, when you
'Cause
think
would
of like tropics,
tropical.
like a tropical
So these are
island,
non-tropical orchids that are native to us.
I mean, I don't know if orchids are classified between
Tropical and non-tropical.
or
It's
anything
just
like that, but within our state, 14 native
Interesting.
orchids. And you think of orchids being kind of like a fussy plant,
Yes.
or just like a sought after plant that not everyone can grow or grow correctly. But yeah,
So
here
we need to locate those native ones.
I'm sure that
And then everybody will
like
be an
up in the-
orchid specialist.
up in the mountains somewhere, just like
Well.
foraging orchids. No, I'm just joking. I don't know if you can actually do that.
We'll have to find out. More information to come on the native orchids to Nevada.
Yeah, we'll get you more information on that.
Very good.
And great job, Joey Lynn. You did a great
Well,
job.
thank you. I didn't know a lot of them, it seems like,
No,
but
it's
we're
okay.
learning together.
I hope
That's
that
the point of
everybody
this,
was
huh?
able to, yeah, I hope everyone was able to learn something new. And that's it for our plant show. And when we get back, we'll talk more about starting your vegetable in our garden. Gardening in the desert always raises questions and concerns, but after this episode, we are confident that you will have the knowledge and expertise to begin a flourishing garden of your own this year. Joey Lynn, have you ever started a garden in the desert? Let's talk about that.
Yes,
What's
I
your
have.
success rate?
It's seasonal,
Okay.
and I, with all full disclosure, do not have anything working in my garden other than ornamental shrubs and trees right now.
Okay.
So it is.
Have you had success though with
Yes, I
vegetables?
absolutely have. I've had success with doing seedlings inside, starting them inside. I've had success transplant. So that means I take the seeds, let them harden off, and then I get them in the ground. And I have great success with buying transplants from Star Nursery each season.
Awesome. And when you're beginning garden, what would you say the first thing somebody would want to know? Would it be when you are wanting to start a garden?
How? I say
Okay.
how. How do you want to start your garden?
Okay.
Do you want to start by seed and follow the whole process to the very, very end and all of the pros and cons and little trials that you're going to face during that? Or do you want to just go to the local Star Nursery or the nursery around you and buy the transplants that are provided and get them in the ground? And so that's where you should start. How do you want to do it? If you want to do it by seed, you should start at a certain time, which is now. We're currently at the beginning of the year, and the seed germination should happen indoors, especially for things like tomatoes, peppers. Those are really popular plants to do. And then moving them into the ground. Into the ground requires a certain temperature. So that part you can't rush. You can't rush that. So starting in seed now gets all the people that are kind of stirring up and getting excited to start a garden. They can start right now by doing that.
And once you have your seeds germinated, you'll probably want to go look at the back of that seed packet, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to know according to your zone. And it'll tell you when you should be planting. But for the most part, it's probably going to be after the last frost, right?
Correct. So depending on where you are, now we're in the desert Southwest, typically the last frost for Southern Nevada is March 15th. So after March 15th, it's expected that you would be safe putting these tender little transplants or the seeds into the soil, and that there wouldn't be another frost. Now, lucky here, our soil doesn't really get that cold that we freeze. Our soil freezes. We have the so much warmth here that's typically not what freezes. It's the soft baby tender parts of the plant that actually freeze. And that's hard to recover when they're younger plants. But temperature wise, it's about 55 degrees, 60 degrees soil temperature that a seedling or a seed can be viable. And then on the opposite side is the highest temperature for fruit to develop on a plant. And that's typically 85 to 90 degrees. Once we hit that, then that plant is no longer going to set fruit. And that's where you have to kind of calculate your window of when you're going to get your seedlings or when you're going to get your seeds into the ground. And there are a lot of really great resources from your cooperative extension. We have that information available on our website as well on what can be planted when, whether it's a seed that goes in the ground, a transplant, or a seedling. So it's all there. You can find that information.
So once you've decided where you're going to want to plant, if you're going to do container gardening, if you want to do a raised bed, or if you're going to plant directly into the native soil itself, you're probably going to want to first evaluate the level of nutrients you have in your soil. And you're going to want to amend it appropriately depending on how much nutrients are in your soil. Now, I know that people do soil evaluations.
Yes.
They'll send their soil to a laboratory beforehand. And it can be costly, but if you do have some super rare plant that you want to just make sure is going to thrive, it could be something that you could look into. But there are other ways to just make sure that your soil is healthy. And probably the best way to do that is just adding organic materials or organic
matter, additive amendments.
Oh, yeah, organic matter
Mm-hmm.
in general.
Well, we'll go back to the soil sampling and the laboratory testing. It is a very, very important step if you're planning to have a bumper crop, okay? Now, Dr. Q's soils are actually complete. So if you were to want to plant directly into a soil that has a pH that is very, very good for fruits and vegetables, then you would pick our vegetable and herb mix, and you can plant directly in that. That's one of the beauties of using the store brand, is that it is a fully composted soil that is rich in nutrients, and starts out at a pH of about 6.5.
Oh.
So the thing about soils is that they're going to change. So unless you're in the native soil, like you have fresh ground and you're breaking into it for the first time, it may not be necessary for you to do a soil sample because that soil's been amended. It's been changed over time. And it's really when we're talking about new land and you're going to put in a specific product or crop that you should have an evaluation. The other evaluation happens if you're having chronic problems. If you have chronic nutrient deficiencies and your soil is not, you're never successful in anything, then we definitely recommend that you get a soil sample. And your cooperative extension will be the place to go to get that laboratory information. So we're not anti sampling here. It's just that we do know that there's so much that you can do on your very own to accomplish a really great soil. First and foremost is that organic matter. Our Dr. Q's soils are great that way. There are other nationally branded soils that in parts of the country do very, very well, and in other parts of the country they don't, because sometimes general branding has to have something that works broadly. Here in the desert Southwest, our soils are very high in salt anyway, so we want to amend with a natural organic matter. You can do that with compost, you can do that with our soils, you can do that with yard waste, meaning clippings and debris that's kind of been broken down and blended, and you can add those, and that's going to help your soil as well.
And so once you've got the soil, you know where it's going to be, let's talk about light. And is there things that you should avoid light-wise when starting a garden? I know that here in the desert Southwest, we get a lot of light, and you can combat that by using shade cloth or, putting it in an area where it's going to get a certain amount of shade. But is there anywhere that you would recommend avoiding, or Tell us more about what you think about that.
Here, the best sun that you can give your plants is the first 6 to 8 hours. And on some of these seed packets, it will actually say the number of hours to the max number of hours of sun. That's what they're referring to. Now, here in the desert Southwest, we have a very, very hot sun, a very damaging sun. So we always recommend that you choose a place that it's going to get the first 6 to 8 hours of morning sun.
Morning sun.
We don't want you to have 6 to 8 hours of the afternoon, which means from high noon till 6 p.m. That is the most destructive sun here in the desert. So if you have only that area, which there's lots of postage stamp sized yards, you don't get a choice. You know, if you're on a balcony and that's all you have to accommodate. So yes, shade cloth is very important. There's two different types. There's two things that I recommend. Either burlap. Burlap is not a UVB blocker. Okay, you need UV rays to feed your fruits and vegetables, to create fruits and vegetables. It's not a blocker, but it will break up the direct sun, and that might be just enough. Now, in the science of fruits and vegetables, if you're going to use a shade cloth, which is specifically woven at a UVB, it has a rating of UV rays. We recommend nothing more than 50%.
Okay.
UV protection. Okay. Ideally 25 to 30%.
Okay.
And we carry everything up to 90%. Now keep in mind, the 90% is almost like blackout.
Right.
Okay. 50%, I think 80% is like the pretty green. So it's not by color, just so you know. The rating, don't pick the color you like. You have to know what that percentage of blockage is.
So we've got the type of gardening that we want to do: indoor, outdoor, container, in the bed, in the ground. We've got the position that we want our garden to be in.
Exposure.
And how much the exposure.
There you go.
Okay. I was thinking more like position in your lawn.
Yeah, the sun exposure.
We know the sun exposure
Yep.
it'll get, and we now know that our soil is going to be amended and it's going to be healthy, the right pH. What's next is really just choosing what you want to grow. And so right now would be the time you're choosing your warm weather vegetables and herbs. And we do have a few ideas for you if you're maybe just getting started and you're not quite sure what to even choose. Here are a few popular options that you could look into.
Yes. So the key to what you were saying was warm weather vegetable gardening. If you pick up a cool weather vegetable gardening, it's not going to germinate. It will sit there. And it will sit in the soil until that soil hits a certain temperature, and then it will germinate. So don't disappoint yourself. Make sure the goal is to have the warm season vegetables. And that includes beans, corn, cucumber. You've got eggplants. Eggplants do really well here, guys. Lettuce. Now, thing about lettuce, there's some things that cross over. There's some things like lettuce that can be done in warm and cool. Melons, you want to get melons in the ground
And
by
melons
April.
do really good here.
They do if they have a lot of space. Melons grow on this very, very long vine. So you got to give things space. So you got to know what it is you're planting and how you can help it to accommodate its growth. Okra does really well. As a matter of fact, our favorite professor, Dr. Angela O'Callaghan over at the University of Nevada, she's now retired, but she's still our favorite educator. She grows okra for the flowers. That's how much she loves okra. Peppers, radishes. Now, the thing about radishes,
The radishes, they don't like to be transplanted.
they don't like transplant, but guess what? If they'll grow in even concrete.
Really?
They'll grow in asphalt, but they don't like to be transplanted. So that's a direct soak.
I was like, I only know that they don't like to be transplanted.
No, they don't like to be transplanted, but they do need to be thinned. This is the other thing. Things like carrots and radishes and turnips. If you put those seeds in the ground They will be prolific. They will grow, and you will have many, 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 many little sprouts, and you must thin. That is why you get those cute little carrots that have the crossed legs, and they're all in different poses. It's because the gardener was too afraid to thin. So we'll talk about that later, but radishes and carrots that you should thin, and beets you should thin because what's happening, those are all storage roots that are storage
like
of sugars and
top roots, right?
carbohydrates. So they're going to do all their growth is going to be underground, so you're not going to see that. So but those are what you can do right now. On the back of your seed packets, they'll even tell you on we sell at our stores. We do have Botanical Interest, which is an amazing seed company. And we also have Burpee, which is also, Burpee has a wonderful little map on the back that you can very quickly see if now is the time to plant. And right now, spring, now is the time to plant.
All right, so while you're planning, a big topic for gardeners right now would probably be companion planting. So if you're unfamiliar, companion planting is actually, it's an ancient gardening technique that's been around for centuries, and it was first used in Native American communities where they said the three sisters. So you had corn, you had bean, and you had squash, and you would plant them all together, and each one would mutually benefit each other. So each plant part had something that had to do with the other that would benefit and help each other grow. So the corn provided structure and almost like a natural trellis for the beans to grow up. The beans were nitrogen fixers and would fix the nitrogen in the soil for both the corn and the squash. And then the squash have these big, beautiful leaves that would provide a little bit of shade coverage and would retain a little bit more moisture and make sure to conserve some water in the soil. So each one would mutually benefit each other. And a lot of recent science has shown that there are a lot more plant varieties than just these three that can be planted together and will really boost your success rate with the plants. So we'll go over a couple of the known ones that we think are really great for your start to your garden. Typically, when you think of companion planting, you're looking for these plants to do one of a few things. You want them to attract pollinators. You would want the plants to mutually deter pests. You would want them to foster the natural trellising like that corn did for the beans, improve the soil fertility like the nitrogen fixers, suppress weeds, regulate shade, and just overall improve the plant health. And yeah, you're right, there's other flowers too, like zinnia, right? Zinnia is a great little flower to put in your gardens. And as long as you're doing it appropriately with the appropriate pairings, then you're going to see how it can improve your success rate.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind, mint is on all the lists. Okay, it does
all the
companion planting lists is
because mint
the mint
is a little
but
invasive.
Yes, so it is very invasive.
Yeah.
So you would put those in a pot near your garden. Things like that, even dill.
Dill is great.
Dill is great, but it can be invasive as well. And I have a trivial question for you, Miss Lady.
What do you think I don't know, or what do you think I do know?
True or false, Madalyn? Onions around strawberries do not affect the flavor, but will help repel rabbits, aphids, and beetles.
I'm going to say true.
You are correct.
Hey.
Onions around strawberries do not affect the flavor.
I did hear that some people, I mean, this is all subjective though. A flavor thing would be some sort of subjective quality of your crops. But, people say planting basil with your tomatoes is going to enrich the flavor of the tomatoes. Yeah. And you can try it and maybe try like a couple heirloom tomatoes and plant them with some basil. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but you can't guarantee that you're going to taste a flavor difference. So I did read up on a little bit about how the different plants affect flavors, and that's just so subjective to...
It is. So
that's why I need the answer, everyone. There was some prior
onions
research.
are really good for rabbit control.
Some other plant pairings that you might consider: basil and tomatoes. Some say that basil enhances the flavor of tomatoes. That is a subjective quality that you would have to try out for yourself. But they are known, basil is known to repel insect pests such as thrips. It'll disorient the moths that lay tomato hornworms, and it also will attract pollinators to support flower health in the tomatoes. So basil and tomatoes are a great pairing. They're also great when you go to cook with them. If there's anyone who loves pizza, some marinara sauce would be great. And you can make your own homemade one with just your 2 little crops together. Dill and borage. Dill and borage will attract the pollinators. Just again, be careful with the dill because it can be known to be a little invasive.
And you don't do dill near carrots.
Okay. That's one thing
It
to note,
is,
everybody.
we don't do dill around carrots.
And garlic, although some people say that it can change the flavor of your crops, we don't know that scientifically to be true, but we do know scientifically that garlic can deter aphids and other pests, so it's good to have them around your plants as long as you're planting them appropriately.
And no garlic near onions or peas.
All right, no garlic near onions or peas, so that's something
but
to
you're
know.
free to try it around other things.
Another pest deterrer might be the mint, but again, mint can be invasive, so that might be a container garden situation where you plant one vegetable with your mint to deter aphids, ants, flea beetles, but if you're planting them in one of your, square footage gardens that you have a lot of plants in that garden bed, it might not be the best because you're going to have a lot of mint. That's going to probably want to suck up all the nutrients from the soil. Another great flower to add to your garden this year is nasturtiums. Not only are they beautiful, but they will attract the hungry caterpillars to them, and it'll attract them away from the brassicas like cabbage and broccoli and kale. And
aphids as well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that one.
They will attract aphids as well. Get them off your roses. A lot of aphids around, so.
Another beneficial herb to consider when you're planting companions together is parsley. It attracts beneficial insects to protect and pollinate tomatoes. So that might be a pairing to consider, as well as sage. It's a useful herb that repels carrot fly, and you can also plant it around a cabbage patch to reduce injury from cabbage moths.
So good.
And a couple more could be tomatoes and petunias with asparagus or oregano with broccoli. So many different benefits of mixing and matching your plants together. Just make sure to do a lot of research for your area. Make sure to do a lot of research on what scientifically is proven to help benefit your vegetable garden. And that's really all you're going to need to get started on your gardens. If you ever have any questions, you can check out our online resources or come into one of our stores and one of our experts can help you in person. But really, that's all we've got today.
Well, it was a jam-packed day. So
I know, I hope you guys learned a lot. And if you're still with us, we hope that you had so much fun and you learned something new.
And you can go to starnursery.com and go to our green pages and go look at past articles that we've done for spring. There's gardening calendars in there, lots of information that we have for that.
We have
and
blog posts.
A lot, and we also have star notes that will tell you exactly what is a warm season vegetable, when to start getting them in the ground, start planting your seeds. It's all right there, and we're happy to provide it to you.
And if you are on our website, you can find our star note on warm weather vegetable gardening. It's going to be star note number 205. Find us on our socials at Dr. Q, Star Nursery Dr. Q on YouTube, Star Nursery LV on Instagram, and our Facebook groups. And just stay up to date with all things Star Nursery and all things gardening. And we hope to see you in the next episode.
See you next time. Bye-bye.